Okay, let me explain about the stakeholder analysis, which is one of the tools of the conflict analysis. What is stakeholders and who is stakeholders? Stakeholders are the one who has interest. They are keenly interested in the development of the conflict, including how it can be settled. Therefore, the stakeholders are not necessarily limited to the primary parties to the conflict. Depending on how the conflict evolved, sometimes stakeholders may be supporting the primary parties. They can be morally supportive or financially supporting the primary parties who are fighting the war. In the case of the crisis in Myanmar, for example, obviously the primary party is the Tatmadaw or the armed forces of the Myanmar, and the opposition, the National League for Democracy, can be understood as also a primary parties. In addition to these parties, if you take into consideration of the crisis in Rakhine State over the issue of Rohingya, then ethnic minority of Rohingya is considered to be a stakeholders, as well as ethnic armed organization in the Rakhine State called Arakan Army. As you are aware that the Tatmadaw has been fighting the war with ethnic armed organizations 70 years. There are 135 ethnic minorities in Myanmar, and among them 21 organizations, and they are fighting against the Tatmadaw or the central government over autonomy or even independence. These ethnic armed organizations obviously are the stakeholders, and sometimes we can even include outside actors as the stakeholders. For example, China and Japan has invested a lot in Myanmar. In terms of economic investment, Myanmar has been recognized as the last frontier in Asia, and many of the Japanese private sectors has invested in Myanmar, so that the Japanese society has a stake in the stability in Myanmar. In that sense, the outsiders such as Japan or the Japanese business sectors are the stakeholders. One typical way to analyze stakeholders is to investigate in their interests as well as their power. What you want to do is to identify as many as stakeholders who are relevant and important to the conflict. It may be unrealistic to identify more than 100 stakeholders. Perhaps you can identify 5 to 10 major stakeholders.